Good afternoon and welcome to QT Connects Café, where we tell stories about everything queer and tech. I'm Matthieu, co-founder at QueerTech and your host. QueerTech is based in Tech in Montreal, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that QueerTech is located on unceded Indigenous land. The Kenya-Kenahe Nation is recognized as the custodians of the land and the waters on which we gather today. As usual, I want to thank our presenting partner, RBC, for supporting this QT Connect Cafe live stream series. And I also want to thank all our sponsors for supporting our program, Unity Technologies, BDC, Google Chrome, Moment Factory, Sun Life, Touch Tunes, Oro Health, and Osadia. As usual, for those who are looking for jobs or looking to get into tech or advance their career in tech, you can check out our talent network on queertech.org/jobs. There is a lot of opportunities there. Also, you can reach out to us for any support. In the last few months, Andy and I have been hosting our community office hours. They happen every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time on Discord. So if you are looking for a job, looking to get an advice on your resume, cover letter, or just need to run your ideas by someone else, we are here to support every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time, and you can join us on Discord. You can find the link on queertech.org for that. And as you know, Pride is not over for people who live in Montreal, because we're lucky and we get to celebrate it twice. So after a big Pride Month. Pride is gonna be again happening in Montreal, and when it's Pride season, it means also that we are hosting Pride Hacks. So Pride Hacks Montreal is gonna be happening on July 29th evening and 30th all day. As usual, we are looking for amazing volunteer and participants to come and support the hackathon and help so many amazing nonprofits that need your tech skills or your business skills for that matter to support. So you can also register for the event on our website, squaretech.org/pridehacks. So before we start with our guests, for those who have any questions or comments throughout the duration of our live stream, you can write your questions or comments on the comment box in the social media outlet that you are watching us on. You can also tag anyone who's looking for a job in tech or looking to advance their career in tech, or anyone who just need directions, inspiration, or some motivation. Just be aware that we might be showing your comments on the live stream. And so for those who love what we do and would like to support QueerTech, you can donate on our websites to queertech.org. Again, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for everyone who donates on a monthly basis to QueerTech. So our guest today is Matthieu Pinard. Matthieu is an IT leader specializing in digital solutions and agile development. Over the past 20 years, he has worked at TD, Orange, Bell, Desjardins, and he's now been working for BDC in the last 3 years. His drive is to build and manage diversified, high-performing teams where people can grow and be themselves. Aside from his career in tech, Matthieu has been involved with GRIS-Montreal, Pride at Work Montreal, and various employee resource groups who all aiming in making queer lives better. Welcome, Matthieu, to the show. You may reveal yourself. Bonjour, Matthieu. Welcome to QT Connect Café.
Bonjour, Naoufel. Hi, everyone.
Well, thank you for joining us. And how is your week going?
Oh, it's going good. I had 2 days off on Monday and Tuesday. So it's a big week, but it's in 3 days. So what was it? I came back to work yesterday, and it feels like it was a week ago, but
always like that. That's awesome. So before we start, I'm really excited to have you in the show. Again, my name is Naoufel. I go with my pronouns he and him. And what are your pronouns?
He and him as well.
Wonderful, great. So during the next 45 minutes, we kind of divide our conversation into two pieces. One, we want to get to know you, get a little bit your background, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your professional experience, advancing your career, and get some advice from you on all the queer people who are looking to either get into tech or advance their career, but also fostering entrepreneurship. I know BDC is related to that, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the work that you do there. So let's go back in history, and in the beginning of your life, tell us a little bit where were you born? Where did your story start?
Wow, I was born in Montreal, born and raised, lived here all my life, except for twice that I went to live abroad. Once in Paris for 2 years, and did an exchange when I was at school many years ago in the UK. But apart from that, I've lived in Montreal all my life. Grew up here, 2 brothers, oldest of 3, and the only gay person in the family.
That's fantastic. And so did you go? You went to school in Montreal? Which school?
Yes, I studied management at University of Montreal Business School, HEC. Did my bachelor's degree there, and also my MSc there, also in management. So I studied change management, strategy, and this good stuff. And all the while, I was a geek. I had a computer at home. I was lucky enough to have parents who gave me a computer when I was really young. And at some point, I asked for a modem. Nobody knew what it was, and it changed my life. And I've been, it's basically been my work since for the past 20 years since I got out of school.
That's great. So you studied management, but you had the love for tech. How did that passion for tech started, and how did you get a tech career or a management degree?
Yeah, it was the 90s, and the internet was something new. I loved it. I mean, yeah, I ate it all. It was amazing for me. So while I was studying, I started working in that field. Back then, it was the Y2K bug, and they were looking, at the school at HSC. They were hiring people to help small companies either connect to the internet or have look into their systems to find if there were any bugs with the Y2K. And basically, if you were able to use a computer, you were an expert back then. And so my thought was, I'll get my formal training in management, but
Yeah,
I'll use my passion as a way to find work, and it's worked since then. I worked in digital, so the .com boom and everything, and then worked my way into there, but quickly moved into management positions, and I'm much less technical today, but
that's great.
I still love this. Yeah.
You mentioned something that probably some of our younger crowd wouldn't understand, which is Y2K.
Yeah, I know. It ages me, doesn't it?
Look, I might have understood it, but maybe some of our younger
Well,
crowd.
some systems back then had the year was 2 digits, and so once the year made it to 99, then everybody was freaking out because it would turn back to 1900. So imagine the impacts on financial systems and all that. It was great business for
Yeah,
for people working in that field back then, because there was a fixed date that things needed to be resolved by before that point. So a lot of changes needed to be done in many systems, a lot of assessments and so on. And it was impacting large corporations, but also small mom and shop businesses that had their cashiers and stuff like that, working on sometimes old software that needed to be upgraded and stuff like that. So
that's great. And so you talked about like being a geek and learning your computer and getting a modern. Walk us a little bit, like what is it you learned first as you start using computer? Were you programming? What are some of the
it,
things that kind of?
It was all about using the internet, I would
Okay.
say, and there was a personal aspect to it, because the connection aspect was important, and I realized back then when I was 17, 18, 19 that I wasn't the only gay person around. So I guess it was part of my personal journey as well to not feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And so I guess all intertwined into that, the web arrived, and then when I got out of university, I started working for companies that were needed websites and stuff like that. When I started at TD at the early in 2001, the website was just a scanned leaflet that was online, and then we were working on making these websites transactional and learning about, and then slowly learning about delivery and agile methodologies and stuff like that. And I ate it all up, and it fit really well with my studies in management, where we were learning about servant leadership, democratic approaches to management, being authentic, not the command and control approach that was dated already back then. And so and I didn't realize how much, how far this would take me, because it's 2022, and I'm still talking about this, and I still and today we see the benefits of
Yeah.
of those approaches, especially in a market where there's people scarcity.
Yeah.
There's a lot more jobs out there than there are people in tech, and so organizations and teams that can offer work environment where you have authenticity and openness and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and a leader that tries to create that environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's now a positive thing.
And it's really great, listening to your kind of progression. And there's a personal aspect to talk about that I've seen in a lot of leaders, which is like the self-learning, right? Like it's learning on your own. So I'm sure that coming from a management background, having an interest in the internet and web. How where were you finding information back then? How did you learn some of the things to like use the web and kind of keep current with how tech was
Yeah,
evolving?
honestly, it was self-taught. There were some trainings that I took, like technical training on early on you know um, database management and SAS and
Yeah.
SQL and stuff like that. I was lucky to have that training while I was working at TD. But also, it was just being passionate about it, and because I was passionate about it, all my friends were also passionate
Mm.
about it. I mean, back then, everybody I knew in HSC are still working today in tech. So and we were helping each other out. Like, look at this, and oh, here's that nice feature. My first job was as a PO, I would say. We didn't call it like that back then, but it was that. So understanding the company's strategy and turning it or translating it into
Oh, wow.
websites and then mobile apps and stuff like that. So it was all about features and understanding what are the best practices and how you can do things. Understanding also where technology is going, more infrastructure, more powerful, more broadband. So understanding the impact of that. Um, and then just trying to use your business acumen to translate it into features and nice usability, simple interfaces, interesting features that catch your attention and stuff like that. So to answer your question, it was mostly around passion, self-learning, reading, um, and back then it was much less organized. There were no
Yeah.
courses or stuff like that. It was great time. I mean, I was what, 26, 27, and I was an expert. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really great, and definitely, I think the current generations are lucky in the sense that there is a more access to information through the internet. I mean, there's so many free courses, forums, either from YouTube or other, or there's just a lot there for people to learn.
Yeah.
Where back in the days, a lot of our leaders I speak with would be like, "Yeah, I went to the bookstore or the library and I got a book and I just read, or I did a training." So it's evolving, and so anyone who has an appetite for self learning, I think today there's just great opportunities. Either you
Yeah,
have
and now there's also, I still think there's always fields that the courses and the books haven't been written yet.
yeah,
So there's always fields that people can learn and be passionate about,
yeah,
that we will give courses on in 2, 3, 5 years. I'm thinking, you hear a lot about fintech and
yeah,
AI and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in those industries that I'm sure I don't know about, and that
yeah.
I'm sure a bunch of people do, and they just talk about it, and that's where knowledge is. So,
Mhm.
to me, the one of the things that are important, follow it, and it's tacky to say, I know, but follow your passion. I mean, it's find something you're passionate about and go
Absolutely.
with that. So,
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit, this part we want to discuss, like, some of the pivotal life moments, as we call them, in that impacted your life. We want to connect it to your career journey. And the reason why is because, especially, we talk about coming out stories a lot in here. More than 50% of queer people are still in the closet at work today in Canada, right? And so these stories are really important because we want to create visibility, and we inspire people to maybe find their authentic self at work. So tell us a little bit, just what was that pivotal life moment for you, that impacted your life from a queer journey or a queer perspective?
well, my first coming out, of course, to parents and
Yeah.
families and friends when I was around 19 years old,
Mhm.
was, of course, a very, very important moment. But I say first coming out because it's not the last. You do
Yeah.
coming out all the time, and so learning. So my first job, learning about that and sort of gauging in the financial industry, which has evolved in the past 20 years, but was, con- conservative to some extent. So trying to, even though Montreal is a pretty open and friendly city and LGBTQ friendly place to be, but still, so figuring out who to come out to at work and when and how, and not to make a big deal about it, but also in conversations you don't I had a boyfriend back then, so talking about him, or what did you do over the weekend, and so learning about sometimes that discomfort that you can feel or stuff like that. So that was, I would say, it's not a specific moment, but that's definitely an archetype of of an important moment, I would say. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, absolutely. This is great. And so because a lot of people go through this process, right? And the beauty of telling these stories is hopefully some people who haven't talked about it realize that our stories can be similar also. We all have different experiences, but some of these stories, as we go through this process, they find similarities in it. And a lot of us have that, like you come out to your family, your friends, work is there, you assess the situation. And with time, some of us, and hopefully a lot of us, get comfortable with who we are. And so at what stage of your career did you start to feel comfortable to come out at work?
Oh, it was early on.
Okay.
It was early on. I didn't. I made the decision back then. To as soon as I finished school, I started my first work. It was something that, to me, it was a conscious choice, saying I'm going to come out and I'm going to feel comfortable, and I'm not going to hide who I am. And if some people don't want me because of that, it's not it's not my problem. it's their issue. So that was from the get-go. But it doesn't mean you stop putting in energy with that. It sort of, it's still a preoccupation. A few examples. You go to a conference. I haven't been to a conference in a while because of COVID, but you go to a conference and you sit next to a guy from Arizona at a baseball game that you will probably never see, and he starts asking about your wife, and you're like, oh, because I have kids, right? So I talk about my kids very freely, but then it's not with a woman, it's I adopted with a guy, my ex-husband, and so like you're like, oh, am I getting there, or am I just eating my hot dog and not caring about this guy that's sitting next to me? So it's always, you're always questioning about that. But the more important people, my closest managers, my boss, even at BDC, I had the chance to do an event like this with our CIO for Pride Month last year. So to me, that was the biggest coming out. I think there were about 250 people listening in on that call, and I'm telling my personal story. So the people closest to me, collaborators, clients, and all that. I worked in 10 years in consulting, and most of my clients knew about that. Not that I make a big deal about it, but I talk about my husband, I talk about my son, about my daughter, about whatever. So it comes up.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And again, we all have different experiences, but I think there is a lesson to learn, is that sometimes as you come out and you create that space for yourself, it's removing a burden. Like we were saying earlier, you don't have to start remembering what's the stories you're telling, and how there is a lot that we need to carry. And so hopefully as we tell these stories, more queer people can feel comfortable, and also find the right employer to work for, right? I don't know, for you, as you came out early in your career, was picking up an employer as you went through your career have made, because you were queer, have made decision that impacted, making that decision?
I gotta say, that point I learned later in my career to put attention to that. Choosing an employer. So I'm 45 years old. I changed employers 3 years ago to BDC. This one I took time to really shop around before I selected that employer. I was like, I want to move to a place where I will be for a few years, where I can grow, where I can be happy, and where I can be myself. And so learning about that and figuring that out, and through the great work that you guys do, I think it allows people to be in contact with, I think, what employers that are sitting around the table are obviously interesting with regards to that, but it's definitely important. And I decided a few years ago to add to my CV systematically the fact that I was implication, social implication with Pride at Work, GRIS-Montreal, stuff like that, so that people that see my CV, if you're in an interview with me, it's out there. Frankly, I never get questions about this for some reason. It's like, but it's there, and it makes me feel that I'm not trying to hide anything, but that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really important point, because and this is a question that I talk so much with students. They're always like, oh, I'm applying for jobs, and I'm like, come out in your resume, put it in there, but you're involved with queer tech, with your LGBT club, but put it in the resume. You know what? If an employer doesn't want you because of that, it is great for you, because then you don't have to go through that interview process and find out later in the process. So it's really great. You also talked, you start to look for things. Were there questions that you were asking employer in your interview process? I don't know, about benefits, about the culture. What are some of these questions that you?
It's hard to tell. I don't. I can't think of any specific questions aside from putting my those organizations on my CV. I will, it's more around trying to find a fit with the person, or seeing if there's a fit with the person you're interviewing. So I'm trying to be as much as possible myself in that interview, and I talk about my management style and how I manage, and how I use authenticity and my personal story as a tool to connect with my employees, and so it's part of my management style. So I'll ask stuff like, how do you assess success, or how do you view, but it's questions that are typical to any type of and it could be around, this could apply to sexual orientation or sexual identity, but it can also apply to many other things. I have kids. I'm not going to ask specifically, like, how do you feel about people with kids, but you can still ask questions around, the schedule flexibility or stuff like that, whenever, or what's the culture like if somebody, so I would say stuff like that. That's the best I can do, honestly.
Yeah, wonderful. I already see some question coming up from our audience, but before I go to one of these questions, I want to talk about personal LinkedIn. It's a management related question, which is about professional career. You're a dad. You mentioned kids. I have kids. I have a husband, and so we don't get a lot of. We haven't had a lot of parents on the show, and it's really great opportunity to talk a little bit about, how did you reconcile, having kids and advancing your career, and what advice do you give other queer people who are thinking to have kids and sometimes worry about their career progression?
Yeah, it's a big it's a big question. But I just thought of something on the previous issue just quickly before. Also, it's not necessarily going to happen in the interview. Do your research. Talk to people who work in these companies to learn about. You'll quickly learn talking to people at BDC is fairly small, so it's fairly easy to know people. So you'll know that there's a trans person, or there's there's an ERG, stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. And those are the things we tell a lot of people looking for a job. I'm like, in today's market, you can ask questions and ask those questions. Do you have a diversity group or an ERG group? What are the benefits? These are green flags, as we call them, that can give you an assessment. The best one, find someone that work here who's queer and just talk to them, because
exactly.
exactly, do that research and find
I mean, when we hire, we ask for references. Feel
Yeah,
free
exactly.
to get references on,
Exactly.
to do
Absolutely.
the opposite. Feel free to
Absolutely.
do your research and talk to people who work there.
Yeah.
But about that, so I adopted 2 kids with my now my ex-husband. So I'm wondering if there has been other gay divorced dads on
No,
QC.
we haven't had. So that's a great situation to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, but so my first was 7 years ago. So my son arrived when he was almost 1 year old. So that was 7 years ago. And so I took. So it was all part of. So the relationship with my boss back then. At some point, I not too close. Of course, you have your, you have your rights. So you have to navigate through that as a man. You don't. So and I'm saying as a man because I had discussions with women who had kids, and they seemed a lot more prepared than I was to handle all of this. They seemed to have had discussions about this that I wasn't aware existed back then. But it's basically I talked about it when the timing was right. So when I went through the process. Of course, adopting takes some time. It takes a few years before you get close to it. So you don't. I didn't feel the need to talk about it until, let's say, the last year or so, where at some point I opened up and I said, well, here's my project. A kid might arrive and in the next year or something like that, and I'll be taking 5 months off. And so you prepare for it, and then stuff happens. But also you have to accept that for a little while your career won't progress as fast as because you won't be there for 5 months. You will have what I call baby brain, when you feel your IQ drops by 10 points or 20 points because you don't sleep at night. My daughter was a newborn when she arrived, and let me tell you, it's hard. And and
Did
then
you and your husband both take paternity leave, or was it
yes,
just
we
one of
split.
you?
In Quebec, we are lucky to have this system where when you adopt, you can share 40 weeks, and I think it changed since then. I think it's now close to 50 or almost a year. But we split it half and a half. So for us,
Okay.
it was very important. And honestly, of course, I think I had 2 kids in 3 years, more or less. I felt my career slow down a little bit, but it was my decision, and I would do it again. No, I don't want other kids, but if it were to do it again for the first time, no, I would do it again for the first time. I mean, it's such a privilege being able to spend time with your kids like all the time, and adopted kids have needs to reconnect, and it's just so precious, so wonderful. To me, it just family was priority and job came second, and that was it. And then they get older, and then things get back on track, and the skills you learned as a parent, let me tell you, they're very useful when you manage people after.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that, because I want to talk about being gay and managing people, being a parent and managing people.
Right.
So we're going to go to your professional development career path. You've had many roles at different companies. Walk us just quickly through your career progression until you became a director today.
Right. So TD was there for three years. Worked as I said, a product owner. Then I moved into consulting for a company that was then bought by Bell. That came into Bell Professional Services, where I ended up spending almost 10 years. And the first 2 years were at Orange. So my client was Orange in Paris. It was a series of contracts where we basically helped them. We were selling our North American French-speaking expertise, in websites and all that. So it was amazing working for such a large organization with such big means to build transactional websites and self-service customer support and all this good stuff, and building a team of Montreal expats working and living in Paris. So it was a great time. So it ended up lasting 2 years. And that's when I started managing people. So it became I became sort of the account lead on that client, and managed a team of about 7 to 10 people, depending on the periods, of basically consultants. So product owners, business analysts, designers, stuff like that. So mostly working on front end stuff. Then moved back, worked for the remainder of my time at Bell on different large clients of Bell, developing websites, mobile apps, and stuff like that for banks and for governments and stuff like that. Then I moved to Desjardins for 5 years, which was my client at Bell. So I jumped the fence and and went to work for Desjardins in IT, application development again, agility, stuff like that. And then I was hired at BDC. Again, I'm a application development guy. I started in digital marketing, but what interested me most was building the shop, not bringing customers to the shop. When today I manage a bunch of applications, not necessarily all customer facing. Some of them are. I have a team of mobile application development that do customer facing stuff, but we also manage financial systems and HR and legal. And so there's a bunch of, there's about 70 applications that we manage. My team. So
wow, that's great. And I want to talk about your role. Before I want to talk about BDC, because it's not your regular bank in a way. So tell us a little bit. BDC is a Crown Corporation, if I'm not mistaken. And so tell us a little bit about what is the mission of
right. We're a Crown Corporation, completely independent from. So federal government is our single shareholder, but aside from that, it's like in Quebec, the SAQ or we're actually about the same size in terms of financials than SAQ. And I wrote down the vision statement that is fairly new. So it explains pretty much what we do. And so I'll just read it from you for you. We empower a nation of builders and doers to build a better tomorrow for all. So that's what we do, and it's in everything we do. So of course we're a bank. We are a business bank. So we deal only with companies, and we help entrepreneurs through loans, advice, and venture capital. So that these are our three domains of activity. There's no day-to-day banking that you can do with BDC. It's mostly when you need money to expand or to do more or to stay afloat. So that's what we do. And so even though we have financial targets like every other banks, there's also a very strong component to what can we do to help, and you can feel it especially when there's a crisis. So the most recent, obviously, COVID, and I was there, and so you could see this organization going around in a very short time, turning around, launching new products, doing new initiative, doing new stuff to make sure that we help Canadians stay afloat during that crisis. We can see today that there were very positive results doing that, and also. So right now, I advise people. invite people to check out our website. But so we have a bunch of initiatives and products and loans and advice, advising offers to help companies either increase productivity, reduce their carbon footprint. We also we will have initiatives to target underserved, what we call underserved markets. LGBTQ plus is one of them, but there's also a bunch of others, indigenous markets and stuff like that. So anything we can
really
do
good,
to help.
very encompassing of a lot of, and this is great.
Exactly.
This is why I wanted to kind of, I asked the question because people see bank and then I'm like, it's a business bank, so it's really great. Thank you for giving that. So coming back to your career, right? You're a director, which means you're a leader, you're a manager, and so one question that came from our crowd was like, how have you found being your authentic self have helped you become a better tech manager?
That's a great question, and I find, and honestly, it's central to the way I manage, being my authentic self. One of the reasons is I think it's more efficient. When you don't fake, when you don't try to fit in, when you don't try to be someone you're not, you have a lot more energy to focus on being better, being more productive, being more creative, being better, whatever you want to be good at. So that's one thing. And what I find is, of course, when you're a gay man like I am, one of the differences that you have to explain to people is your sexual orientation. And so I developed a bunch of tricks to do it quickly. Like last year, I inherited a new team of 15 people that joined my team, and I was like, all right, first team meeting, I'm going to talk about the fact that I'm gay. Somehow, I'll just plug it in. I don't do a big deal about it, but I'll just plug it in somehow.
Absolutely.
And what it does is it opens up the door for other people to be authentic about their difference or the stuff that they feel they're different. And there's all sorts of it doesn't have to be sexual orientation. And then you discover that pretty much everybody spends a portion of their time trying to fit in, and so as soon as you can go around and say, be yourself, and with that comes also don't try to hide your mistakes, because being authentic is also about not hiding your mistakes, creating an environment where people can fail. We talk about that in Agile a lot, but it comes down to authenticity. Fail fast. Don't cover up your mistake. Be yourself. So it's all linked. And when we think about agile development, to me, it fits really well with being open and authentic.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of leadership, is that you can set the tone of how your team and your environment reacts with you. And I think having leaders that are coming out to their team and creating that space, it makes other people feel comfortable, right, to discuss, either to come out also to their work, and we've seen that in a lot of interviews we've done and other teams, but also just other people have different backgrounds, and sharing that creates a really great team bond. I'm going to come back a little bit to like skills and competencies, all right? Advancing queer people in tech is one of the mission that we have, and we really want to see more queer leaders in executive roles and leadership roles. And so, what are the skills and competencies that you developed to become a director, and while you're a director?
The first one that comes to mind is the listening part. In the past 20 years, but most notably in the past 15, since I started managing people, is I said at the beginning I was 27 and I was an expert, so I was used to people hearing, listening to me. And then when you shift into a management position, the more quick you are to understand that you're better off shutting up a lot and listening and letting people talk and listen to their point of view and try to adopt their point of view. To me, that's something I learned to do much more systematically. Also, being open to different ideas and so on. I think that would be one thing that's very important to me. That's, I would say, central to me. And then there's a bunch of stuff that learning to be organized, not to be under a pile of different priorities, and trying to manage your time. That's very important. Good for everybody.
Absolutely.
Don't underestimate that. There's only 24 hours in a day, and you need to sleep for a few hours. So so the more you take on, the more you have to be able to say, okay, that's going to be good for me, and that's not going to be for me. That's going to be for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you're parents, also when you have kids and they get sick and there's responsibilities. So time management is great. Prioritizing is really important.
And when the pandemic hit and the kids were home, no school, no daycare, and you have to squeeze in your work day somewhere in there, you have to learn to prioritize. And you're lucky if you work for an employer that understands that.
So this is really great, because we talked about bringing your authentic self and how also being queer kind of help you manage teams and that authenticity. But let's talk about being a parent. What is it that helped being a parent? How does it help you also manage team and manage?
That's a big question. but again, it comes, one of the things that I don't have control over my kids. Like that's something they have their ideas, and they're going to take me places that I didn't expect. And as they age, it gets even truer and truer. I'll start the day, I'll start the weekend having all these plans in mind, and then they're like, no, that's not what we want to do. And and then my 5-year-old daughter is really good at negotiation. Like she's just awesome. So again, it comes down to your ego and sort of being able to let go and being open to different perspectives. And sometimes they're right. And sometimes they have the better idea, and you better listen to it, because it's you would be mistaking. That's definitely one thing that I learned. And again, and it comes back also to time management and priorities and stuff like that, because you have to squeeze in your work in very specific time periods, time boxing.
So learning, like I think I've seen this with managers and leaders who are parents, to have more flexibility, right? I think even with people that don't have flexibility, you become a little bit more understanding of circumstances, especially when you have kids, and giving people some freedom to work. And I think this is something a great takeaway from this pandemic. A lot of people have believed the 9-to-5 schedule is how to work, and it's the only one. But we've showcased that if you give people some room to manage their life, they can still perform at work and perform at home, and not have to do one in the detriment of other, right? And build that resilience with them.
Absolutely. And I think all of this makes you much more of a better team player. People know that, and I think as a parent, that's something that people can feel that they can count on you. Your word is money in the bank. That's something also very important, very precious. And working in an environment that promotes teamwork, BDC is great for that. Having these abilities to being able to listen, to be open to the other's position, being flexible on some of your positions, being able to express your needs in terms of, well, here's what I need, and here's what I'm flexible on. So it makes you much more of made me anyway, a much better team player, I think.
No, absolutely. And I love that, right? Like I think there is that perspective of learning from being a parent, being a queer person and bring in that to work and use it to your advantage, right? It's giving you that understanding. So I love that. So a couple of questions, because I see time is running out, but one of the questions that recently been talking with some of our Career Tech members are people thinking about advancing their career. One of the ways they're looking at, doing master degrees and going back to school. You did a master degree in management. I'm curious, just like, why did you decide to do a master degree? How did you see it fit within that career development?
I did my master's degree right after my bachelor's degree. So this is my experience, which is very different from somebody going back to school.
Yeah.
Back then, I wanted to keep on studying. It was just mostly about that. What I would strongly suggest is someone thinking about doing it is it something that's going to push you? What I really appreciated about my master's, and especially writing a thesis, was it pushed me into I think a territory that was unknown to me, and that it pushed my brain, it pushed me to go further, So I would say, and I know some people who went back to do an MBA, for example, had a degree in a technical field, and then go back to study management, do an MBA, stuff like that. It's basically, the content is important. The experience is much more important. It's all about, are you challenging yourself? Are you putting yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable, and that's how you learn. So you can do that through school, through professional training, through going for a new job, having kids, all sorts of stuff like that. But basically, when you put yourself in a position to challenge yourself, that's where you grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't necessarily know the you who's going to come out of the experience, and you just need to trust the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that advice. So my kind of last question to wrap up is, you mentioned earlier, you put in your resume like GRIS-Montreal, pride at work, and so it sounds you volunteered for this organization or give some time. Why did you volunteer? What was your goal of doing that, and was there any impact on your personal or professional career?
Yeah, I think it was just a drive to make a difference in people's life. I was fairly lucky in my life with regards to my family acceptance and the society in which I grew, and I, of course, I faced some hurdle. Homophobia exists, and I saw it, but I was fairly lucky. So a drive to give back, to me. The alignment between your values and your actions is something that's very important. So GRIS-Montreal was about going in schools and talking about your life at a moment in my life where I was just out of school and into professional. And then after a few years, I got involved in the professional setting of Pride at Work, and again trying to maybe help people avoid some of the stuff that I went through. So, and then I stopped my involvement, and I say hi to people I may have stopped seeing back then when I started my project for adopting. So I started focusing that on my kids. And only recently, since I came back at BDC, I got involved with the ERG, and now with Queer Tech, I pushed real hard to make these things happen. But it's all to me, and it's even one of the reasons I chose to work for BDC, because it's aligned with my values. I feel that I'm making a difference. So to me, it's just a drive that I have of trying to give back.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different ways to give back, right? I think if people have time, giving your time and supporting an organization is great. Nonprofit do great work for our community. When you're a leader, you don't have the time, and especially when you're a parent also, just support another organization through this initiative is wonderful and supporting. And thank you for that support. So, I mean, with that, we kind of come to an end of our show. And I want to thank you so much, Matthieu, for joining us and sharing your story today. As we learned, you've been sharing your story for a long time with so many generations. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Visibility is very important. And I think it starts from us in the community to do that. So if people want to reach out to you, is LinkedIn always a great? I see your LinkedIn on here. So
yes.
they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your story, and looking forward to continue this collaboration.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Nice talking to you, Naufel, and
thank you.
Hello to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we end our live stream today, I want to again thank our sponsors and supporters for this program. RBC is our presenting sponsor for this QT Connect live stream series. I also want to thank Unity Technologies, BDC, Google Chrome, Moment Factory, Sun Life, TouchTunes, Oro Health, and Ocedia. Our next show will be on September 8th. We're taking a little break in August, and hopefully many of you also will be taking a break. For a matter of fact, I will be on vacation on September 8th, but Andy, my co-founder, will be hosting the session. We'll be letting you soon the speaker or our guest for that episode. And until then, stay safe and enjoy summer if you're in Montreal or anywhere in Canada. Thank you, and
Thank
bye-bye.
you.